I'm Bobby.
I'm Zach.
I'm David.
And our project is Unity Open 2D Toolkit. So for those of you that don't know, Unity is a game engine that's widely used, and it essentially handles everything that has to do with games. It's mainly used as a 3D because that's where it's like sound. And our GSAS program here uses it, and it's very widely used. GoForce by Freelab Games, Temple Run, both of them. Thomas Was Alone, Kerbal Space Program, and Scrolls are all examples of games that have been used with Unity.
So as we said before, Unity is great for making 3D games, and they've just finally started to support 2D. However, there's still a lot that needs to go into it. Many developers are making their own software like every time they need to do something with 2D, and we really wanted to do something to help that. So this summer we decided to make a tile mapping support feature where we started working with the tile editor called Tile, and we want to be able to import maps, we want to chunk them, and be able to do a bunch of different features with it. And we're doing this because a lot of the 2D software is available on the store, but as you can see, like, it can cost upwards of $150 just for a license to use, and I think that's a little ridiculous.
So this is our full feature list. It's really wordy. The green stuff is stuff we already have done. The yellow stuff is what we're working on right now, and it's sort of in like a half-baked state. And the red stuff is what we'd like to add in the future. Stuff we're really excited about adding especially is dynamically generated maps. Right now we have support for importing from Tile. We want to extend that API to allow people to make their maps on the fly. It's a little bit more difficult because especially on mobile platforms, you have to go through a couple hoops to get to save data locally and read it locally on the fly. But we do have it tested on Windows, and we'd like to get it tested with Mac, Linux, and a bunch of other mobile devices. So we have a demo plan for everyone, so we'll just go through our demo real quick. Before we do, special thanks to all of our RCOS mentors and everyone supporting us. But for our presentation, we're actually going to walk you through how easy it is to use the Open 2D Toolkit to make a basic tile mapping game. So we're going to open Unity real quick. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to make a new project. We'll call it our RCOS presentation. And we're going to set up the defaults for 2D in this. Then Unity will go through and make a project file for this. And Unity has a lot of really helpful stuff with it, but again, we're missing a lot of the functionality that makes 2D so great. So we start with a blank project like this, and there's not a lot that we can do. So first thing we're going to do is import our package. One thing that's really great about Unity is we can export all of our code as a Unity package, which we can upload to the store, and then anyone who downloads it can really easily add all those project files to their project just by importing the package. They'll give you a choice of what you want to import to, so you can choose to import the examples if you want them or not. We're going to keep them because that's going to be what we're going to be showing mostly. So we'll just fill up this little progress bar and finish real quickly. So now we have all the code in there, and that was a really two-step process. And one of the things that we were very concerned about while making this project was usability, because a lot of people who use Unity aren't necessarily coders. A lot of people want to make games, and they can be just artists, especially in the GSAS program. We have a lot of artists who attempt to make games, and they have a lot of trouble getting past the coding. So to make a tile map, it's actually incredibly simple. All you have to do is make a new game object, and then we'll just call that our tile map. And then everything is component-based, so we can just add a component, and then go into our Open 2D Toolkit tile map stuff, and add a tile map controller. And we need a tile map to put in it, so we'll make one of those now. To make a tile map, all you have to do is go to our TMX importer. And TMX is the file format used by Tile. Document right there. But it looks a little wordy, but all you have to do is select the file that you want. We're going to use our examples. And we'll start out with this TMX file. And then you have to give it 3 folders to put things in. We're going to need a tile map output directory, and that's going to be where we store all of our tile maps. So, tile maps. And we'll just put that there. Then we'll make a tile sets directory. All these tile sets are stored in the same directory so that multiple tile maps that use the same set of tiles or even the same images can share all of them and reduce your memory footprint. Then we'll make a resources folder. The resources folder is a special folder in Unity that lets you read and write data to it, but the data has a lot of restrictions and you have to make sure that it's formatted a certain way compatible with Unity serialization. So we're going to also rebuild our chunks for our tile map, and we're going to say 0 by 0 to start out with, and that'll default to making the whole map one giant chunk. You can chunk the map as large as you want. You can even leave it with a chunk that's not full. So one that only has like the bottom left-hand corner with tiles and the rest is empty. And it'll optimize for space that way. We're not going to be using any import delegates this time, but import delegates let you add some custom scripting to when you import your tile map. And then to import it, we just click our import button, and it'll go through that little dialog for us. And when we twirl open our tile maps directory, we've now got our desert tile map, and we can see some basic info about it in here. But the really easy part is you just have to put it in here. And now you can see it shows us the general layout of our tile map. We can begin editing it, and this is for using it in the editor so that you can visualize where everything is. We can load all of the chunks, and it'll actually build our tile map for us. And we might think that we're ready and set to go, but if we go into play mode, we've added a warning. It'll say that you have your map initialized before you enter play mode. It's generally a no-no to do that because the chunks need to be loaded and unloaded dynamically, and leaving it in edit mode as you go into play mode will not reflect what it'll look like when you compile it into an executable. So if we end editing, it'll still draw our grid lines for us, which we can say, don't draw those grid lines and they'll go away. Or only draw it when we have the tile map selected, so if we click on the camera, it'll go away. But then if we go into play mode, it'll be blank, because although there is a tile map controller on it, that tile map controller isn't directed to do anything. So for the presentation, we've added another component that we're going to be including in our bundle along with it. That's just a basic controller, and we tell it how many chunks to load. We're just going to load our one chunk in both directions. And then we start it up. Our map will be there. We can't move around yet, though. So another thing that we've added is a basic camera controller for it. So we go into here. We can add pixel perfect camera. We can tell it how many pixels per unit we want. Our tile map is rendered at 32 pixels per unit, so we can say we want it rendered at 16, which will make it bigger, or we can say we want it at 64, which will make it smaller and higher density. Some of the pixels probably won't get rendered though, so depends on what you want. And in addition to that, we'll also add a movement controller, which will make it so that we can move around in the scene. Now when we go into play mode, we'll be able to move around, and we can see our tiles in there. We've had some issue with the black lines that you might see appearing. We think that's due to some texturing issues with Unity, the way that it slices the tile sets. We're going to be looking into that. We're trying to get it fixed right now. But so rectangular grids are one of the common forms of tile maps. We also have support for 2 other types. We have support for isometric and staggered isometric, which are slightly different. This is an example of an isometric file. Just to be cool, we'll chunk that 5 by 5 so that we can see some of the cool things with chunking. As it chunks, it'll show you how long it's been taking to chunk it. So now when we drag our isometric map file up in there, it'll actually re-render the grid to show what the isometric file will be. And if we load all of the chunks for that, we'll actually take away those grid lines so that we can see it a little better. You can see this really nicely rendered tile map here. And it'll render the same if we go into play mode. And staggered isometric. We don't really have a standard example of those, but we made one to test it with. So here's a staggered file. And staggered differs a little bit. You should be able to see the way that it differs because it draws sort of like Cartesian coordinates, but not exactly. It makes it more rectangular, which is better for chunking because the screen will be rectangular as well. And we can go into editing and then load all those chunks and it'll show up just the same. But the main feature is that you can go straight from tiled to Unity. So to show some of those example files that we've been using tiled, we move some files. If we go through and we just open our example files, we'll try out our desert TMX. And in tiled, it's exactly the same as it rendered in Unity, which is great. It's exactly what we wanted. And tiled has a lot of support for building terrains out of things. You can easily just click and drag and build tile maps super quickly. And then it also supports the isometric and the isometric staggered, which is how we made our other example files. But that's the bulk of what we've been doing for our RCOS project. And as you can see, it's really easy to build tile maps now, which is a staple feature of 2D. And Broforce, for example, used tile maps. We hope a lot of people can benefit from it. So, any questions?
So it's really seemed to be great. Last time I checked, it was like a couple $1,000 than other platforms.
Well,
Okay. Unity has a paid thing that you can subscribe to and buy like the pro version of Unity, but it only adds in many features, and none of those are 2D anyway. But Unity is
If you want to use it, right?
you can exactly.
and even then, they have developer licenses. So if you want to say your game was made with Unity and like make money off of it, you will have to purchase a license. But that's much less than
It's basically
pro
free
version.
until you make money off of it.
Have you tried to like build a game on top of it? Because just from my experience, whenever you're building a framework or a library, you like need to like make something with it to like realize what APIs you're missing and what APIs are like.
Oh yeah, so we've been keeping in mind a couple different games that we were sort of like thought experiment games that we would be making with it and design the API to that. I'd say our three big games that we've sort of thought about trying to make with our map editor are Pokemon, because Pokemon is a really big tile-based game. That's what sort of led us in the direction of getting all of our chunking up to par, because Pokemon's a really large, continuous overworld, and loading and unloading those chunks would be absolutely essential, or else you're going to see massive performance hits. So Pokemon was one of them. We actually thought about League of Legends as our other one. If we were to make League of Legends 2D, what it would be like, and that would be one large map rendered all the time. So we were originally considering adding in optimizations to build large rects out of our sprites instead of rendering each of them individually, but we investigated the performance of it and it wasn't enough to make it worthwhile. And if we did keep them separate, we could also add in the ability to change the tiles on the fly and dynamically render your chunks, and it wouldn't take as long to build them, so you would be able to make them on the fly and render them. And then our third one is sort of like 2D Minecraft, which is what has inspired us for dynamically generated content. Either whole maps dynamically generated or chunk by chunk generation. We'll support both of them, and we're hoping to get that up and running within like 2 weeks.
Awesome. If you guys are here for the hackathon that we're gonna have like not this weekend but the next, like one of those games there. That'll be pretty cool to do.
Sounds good. Any other questions?
So you are porting you are using the 2D generation to the Unity.
Yep.
Have people looked at the code, or have you been in any training list where they have been asking for 2D help?
Not really. Well, we have our repo up and running. We haven't gotten a lot of traffic to it, unfortunately. Although we'd like to see more traffic to it. But when the fall semester rolls around, we will be trying to, get the GSAS professors to say, hey, if you're not so great at programming, this could make a really great game for you in 2D.
If there are waiting lists, we could possibly post it there and see what the reaction is.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Suggestions? Anyone want features here? We can always add more. All right, well, thank you so much, guys.